Get it?
Oh, well.
I got to. After the meeting, could do, I can chat with you a little bit. Okay? You do? I do. All right.
Yeah.
So the big island of Oahu is getting hammered.
Are they right now?
Really bad, or, yeah,
It's gonna be sound.
category 4.
Hawaii?
Yeah.
No, I saw that was gonna be hitting, and it did hit
Hammer.
officially.
They did.
Oh, man, that's not gonna be good for them. First the volcanoes, now this. Not their year.
The Navy moved all their ships and submarines.
I saw that too, yeah.
Put them out at sea?
Yeah, they got it when that stuff happened.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy. Now, from what it looked like, it's a form of El Nino, isn't it, or some kind of bypass of it? Because it's the time of year for El Nino.
What was that?
I remember back when they had the El Nino T-shirts. I survived El Nino.
Well, I survived 2000.
So,
Whatever it was. Yeah, that too, the millennium, the Y2K.
so the Menlo Park Fire Department is going out to Hawaii to help. And then
Who
we
is?
have Menlo Park, which is right near San Francisco.
Okay, yeah.
And then they're gonna have to hurry back because of Hawaii, you know, the storm's gonna hit the
Yeah.
west coast.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Who did?
We can't log on to Facebook, is all.
What? We got people watching tonight.
Big lot of, there's advertising.
Somebody forgot their password or something.
Yeah, something. It's not letting us get in.
Who's representing that? DPW.
You ready?
Don't have enough somebody.
So August 23rd.
Right there. Oh.
Carol, this is on your street, right? Across the street from you? So it's not good.
Being set up.
All right, if we can begin, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Village of Webster Board of Trustees to order on August 23rd. You stand please with me. Pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You all right?
That kind of faded. Me and Jerry video.
All right. First is the public comment this evening. If anybody would like to address the board, please come up now and we'll listen to what you have to say. Anyone this evening? Then I will close the public comment portion of the meeting, and we will move now to board business. First, we have a resolution to approve the minutes from the August 9th, 2018 board meeting. You've had an opportunity, I hope, to look them over. that I saw anything that I would ask to have changed. But, so I would ask that for a resolution to approve the minutes as written by the clerk.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Trustee Alito?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Trustee Belkane?
Abstain.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next, we have here a resolution to authorize payment of Macedon excavating invoice of $320,288.45. And that is pending final approval by Lou Engineers. During the course of their work, there was a condition that it not be released, or we were asking that it not be released until there's confirmation from Lou Engineers that Macedon is or is on the path to completing the DBE requirements for the project. So we're looking for approval to pay this bill to Macedon Excavating for work done on the North Avenue project, pending final approval by Lou Engineers. I can have a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Shaking your head no.
Discussion?
Is it, well, you know, I'm concerned about the DBE. Is there some controversy over that?
Is there a concern about it? Yes, there is a concern about it.
And I don't think we should vote to approve the money tonight.
It is approved only on the approval by Lou Engineers. Lou Engineers is looking into it, and they give their approval, looking at all of the conditions that are necessary to meet the federal guidelines for the DBG. And
So what's the benefit of approving it tonight then?
Pardon?
What's the benefit or not the benefit to just wait?
Because they probably need to, if approval comes from Lou Engineers, then that money can be released to pay for what they're doing, and what they've done. Otherwise, they'll be waiting for 2 weeks.
So this is supposed to be after anything now, you're saying?
Yes. And if it doesn't, if we don't get approval from Lou Engineers, then it's going to remain unpaid until we get that approval. So what we're doing is
So
we're
it's contingent on
approving.
Lou's approval.
Pardon?
It is.
Can we do that?
Why can't they wait for 2
But
weeks?
if you make it contingent on Lou's approval, then they're gonna make it's ultimately contingent on your approval, not Lou's. So Lou's gonna make a recommendation to this board whether they're in compliance. And so you should wait to hear from Lou.
Because they could be not in compliance.
Yeah, what if
That's
they're
what I'm
not,
saying.
if they're, you know, because ultimately it's this board's decision whether to pay them or not. It's not Lou Engineers. So I think you should wait till you hear from Lou Engineer. If they gotta wait 2 weeks, they gotta wait 2 weeks. Are they gonna go out of business in 2 weeks?
I have no idea. There's a lot of business in 2 weeks.
Well,
They put that
probably-
in
probably-
until Friday, right?
So they're probably not gonna go out of business, but it just seems to me that ultimately it's this board's responsibility to make sure that the project meets the terms of the grant. Lou can then give their opinion as to whether or not it meets it, and you'll probably follow their opinion.
I
So it's
would
3
follow
weeks
their
and not 2
opinion
weeks
because,
because I
It
think
seems
of
to
the
me
holiday.
you should wait for their opinion. It's not like it's,
Yeah, there seems to be quite a controversy over the DBE with a subcontract. Apparently, some of the work that was supposed to be done by Macedon Construction was done by a subcontractor, who also subcontracted.
some of the work that was being done by the subcontractor from Macedon, that was the DBE.
Right, but they also
They then
subcontracted some work.
subcontracted.
And
Correct.
the
Part of
sub,
that.
the second sub had to prove DBE.
I
That's correct.
believe that is so. From what
Because
I-
what we're talking about, eventually, is a release of $800,000, right?
Eventually.
So if they, I mean, that's from the state.
Federal. Federal.
It's federal. Is that in jeopardy if the DDE isn't met?
Is it? It could very well be.
Then I suggest that we don't go for it right now.
We've already released, I believe. We have released money already.
Around close to
20,000.
200,000.
Yeah, but not yet. I just think that it's a safe thing to wait for 2 weeks. And it could be a serious problem if the second contractor doesn't come up with the right information.
Correct. And then we would have, we would say, they haven't met the criteria.
So we need to find out what's going on with the second contract.
And that was in contact with Blue Engineering.
Yes, I understand. So once he can inform us of what's going on, if it's good or not.
The next meeting's in 3 weeks, 9/13. If that matters at all.
Could do a workshop, right?
Doc, we do that in a workshop? There's a workshop before that.
Yeah, you could approve it in a workshop.
9/4 is our workshop meeting. If we waited, it's,
That would be a week and a half.
Huh?
That'd be about a week.
If we get the information,
Right.
and there's nothing wrong with it. So, I can, I'm leaning towards Carl.
Wait until September 4th.
I'm fine.
Good motion out there. Anybody? No?
I started.
I'll second it.
No,
I thought that you're changing it.
No.
no. No.
So he started and that was it.
Yeah,
I
that's
said to
right.
Carl, why are you shaking
Yes.
your head? Because it's all shaking.
Correct. So there's no second motion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have asked for a motion to table until the workshop or later, until we hear from Blue Engineers and verify that the requirements of DBE have been met.
I make that
Pay
motion.
320,000.
I'll second.
Trustee Lauer,
Aye.
trustee Belkane,
Aye.
trustee Abolito,
Aye.
Mayor Byers.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Moving on then to claims and warrants. Al, I know you signed them. Carl, I believe you did as well.
I did.
Quick question,
I got one too.
Sioux Steel Landscape for 2340. I know it says Veterans Park update planning, but can somebody elaborate on that, or?
Yeah, I think that's the outfit that we hired through Matt Sheffield, wasn't it?
Correct. The
$300.
plans, pardon me?
23. For $2,000, what do they do?
Well, actually, we approved, way back, we approved, I think, 7,000 for the plans for Veterans Park and for Shands Park. The changes, the modifications, and this is a proposal for the grant. The grant proposal was submitted, it is now gone, and we will hear in December whether or not we get it. But that was all part of
That's
the
7,000.
the 7,000.
All right. One other one, NFP Telecom?
Where is that?
That's on page 4. One for 1169, another one looks like a phone repair for 210.
Yes,
More
they,
concerned about the 1,200.
our phones went down and the phone up here went down, so I'm almost positive that's what that's for. They had to come and replace our Wi-Fi was down here, and so we had to have a part replaced for that, and it was a pretty big, we were out of Wi-Fi for like a week. So it was just repair to that and the phones.
Because the medium room phone repair is $210, but then there's another charge for $1189.
They had to replace the switch in the box that's in the back room here for the Wi-Fi. I'm not exactly sure how much that costs.
Oh,
But I think it was a combination between parts and labor.
okay.
That included the phone being down in the office, because I knew there was an email that went out
It was related,
related to
yeah.
that.
Your turn.
Yeah, the phone downstairs was beeping that, notifying us here that the phone up here wasn't working, so it was going.
I got one too. Page 1, second one down. On welding. Do we have an annual contract with them? No.
I didn't even hear what you said.
Do we have an annual contract with On Welding?
Yeah, what's the second one?
Well, propane refill.
Yeah.
I don't think we have an annual contract. I think we just needed more propane because we had to do some welding in our.
Okay, Smarty Pants.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering why we don't have a BJ's card and get a refill on propane for $9, 20 pounds instead of $44.61.
It's for, it was, well,
It says 20 pounds.
yeah, it's for the big welder. It's, we have a MIG welder and a TIG welder, and one of them takes like the big tank. Lowe's or Home Depot doesn't sell it, and I think BJ sells it either. You know what I'm talking about? You have an oxygen tank and a acetylene tank and things like that. That's what we had to get from home.
In propane too, right? Yeah. Okay. So should get propane for BJ. Do we have a BJ account?
Yes,
It's not a lot of savings, but it would be a good idea.
20-pound thing. Is that what it was listed as?
Yeah, 44.61.
That's a question then we can ask the chief.
So I think that might have been because we have the welders, but we also have the torch.
It's acetylene.
Yeah.
Carl's looking at the actual bill. The bill says it was a 20-pound propane tank refill. It wasn't acetylene, it had nothing to do with the torch, it was just propane.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I assume it had to do something with the guys in the shop.
Was the tank outdated or needed hydro testing? That would account for the extra cost.
Possibly.
So then again, questions to ask Jake. I coded a million invoices a day of work and they're very undetailed, so you can't always just look at the invoice and there's probably other things that happen.
That's a question, Matt.
Well, BJ's is right there, plus it saves gas and all that stuff. I mean, that's a big deal, but you're looking at pennies. I saw a transfer for 1 cent. That was a withdrawal and a deposit.
Then we'll find out, if there's more to it than just a second.
Just a question.
I will ask the question. Anything else? Can I have a motion to
Thank you.
pay the claims and warrants?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
trustee Belkane,
Aye.
trustee Abolito,
Aye.
trustee Lauer,
Aye.
I will look into that,
Okay.
get back to you on that, or have Jim get back to you. We have one budget modification, and that is a transfer, interfund transfer out from 0100990100, $1,160 to line 04005031-000, transfer in of $1,160. This will allow for the additional invoice from Labella for professional services. Those services, for Labella? That's, came from Plymouth. Had to be, sewer. We have a motion to approve the transfer out $1,160 and transfer in of $1,160 for the professional services of Labella.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Trustee Abolito?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. Next, we have the financial statements. They're for you to take a look at. If there are any questions that you have, that you would like to bring up at the moment, do so. I think we need a resolution on it, so those are for your information. Expenditures for period ending July 31st. I would say that the sales receipts that we received for first quarter, I believe was up about $4,000 from a year ago, first quarter. And we just received sales tax revenue for second quarter, that's up about $14,000 to $15,000 from
Good.
last year. So sales tax revenue has increased, which is good for us. All right, and moving to agenda item number 5. This is a resolution to adopt section 615 entitled Expense Reimbursement of the Village of Webster Policy Manual as amended. And the amendment, as you can see here in yellow, it says here that all required documentation and corresponding receipts must be submitted to the village treasurer in order for the reimbursement to be processed. Please see section 616 for travel reimbursement. And note that all travel arrangements should be made or must be made by the front office staff. So there are 2 changes there, and one referencing then what we have asked for in terms of the change for travel expense. So I would ask for a motion to adopt this change to section 615 entitled Expense Reimbursement in the Village of Webster.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Trustee Abolito?
Aye.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And then if you look next, this is adopting a change in section 616 entitled Travel Policy of the Village of Webster Policy Manual. And our changes are the whole thing. That's right, we made a number of changes here. Again, it says that the Village of Webster will utilize the per diem meals and incidental expense payments, rates for travel. With some exceptions as noted below, per diem rates may be found on the General Services Administration's website. The website specifies the maximum amount eligible for reimbursement for the specific area traveled, as well as the specific time that there's travel in that area. Prescribed per diem allowance includes gratuities and any applicable taxes. So there is a total for the day. To be reimbursed for meals, an original itemized receipt is required, and the maximum reimbursement will not exceed the per diem rate. Only the amount spent will be reimbursed. So they cannot go over, if they have to pay for their own meals, they cannot go over that per diem rate. And they certainly can be under. If they're under, they will only be paid for what they expense. Okay? And receipts are required. If they are not provided, then they will not be paid. And that is one of the big changes to the policy. Although it was there before, I'm not sure it was totally followed.
Were the times always in there?
Pardon me?
The times?
What time?
The time that you're allowed to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
That's just if it's a less than a full working day.
Right?
Yes, they were, but I
They were.
toned it down a little. Because it originally said, only if you leave before 6 a.m. So I said between the hours of breakfast.
Oh,
So they eat breakfast at 9:30 or, I don't know.
No, yeah.
That's so funny.
There may be some degree of leeway, I suppose.
I don't understand that section, because you've got if departure. So are you telling me,
It's taken
it's like for
directly
lunch,
from
so
GSA.
take for example lunch. Lunch may be claimed if departure is between the hours of noon to 2 p.m. So if somebody leaves at 11 o'clock in the morning, they can't, but they're gone through till 3 in the afternoon, they don't eat lunch. They don't get paid for lunch.
Yeah, I don't like this.
That's the way it's phrased.
I can absolutely change it. That part, specific part is taken directly from the GSA.gov, besides the one change I
Well,
made.
they don't make that, it just doesn't make any sense to me. The same thing with dinner. So departure means you have to leave your workplace at 5 o'clock. But who leaves at 5? Like if you leave at 4:30, you don't get dinner.
Well, if you leave at 4:30, you go back to your hotel room to take a quick nap, and you wake up at 8, you can't eat dinner.
It's only for partial travel days.
I understand it, but it still doesn't make sense. So partial travel, I understand it, but it just doesn't make sense using, if the departure is between these
What
hours.
we're using is something that was done by the federal government, so does it make sense?
He's not calling Heather out, he's just saying he
No,
doesn't like it.
wherever it came from, I'm just saying it doesn't, to me, it just seems like doesn't make sense, and it's only gonna cause,
If you're okay with it, we
it's
can
only
just
gonna
take it
cause
out.
issues down the
We can cut it
road.
out.
If you're okay with it, we can just take that out. Okay, that's no problem.
I have,
Well, yeah. I can see it if,
I mean, they're not going to claim a breakfast if
It's-
in
it-
fact they leave at noon for an afternoon conference. They claim
right,
lunch
right.
or dinner, but.
I don't think that they're all, going to lunch before.
well, I can see what you're, I can see
I
what you're,
usually
I can
by
see what
4,
they're,
senior citizen, you know, this is
I
gonna
can see
kill
what,
me.
I can see what they're trying to do, but it's just the way it's phrased. Like, you don't want, if somebody's gone for this is less than a full day, so let's say they leave at 11 and they're back by 3. Well, you don't want them eating dinner at 3 o'clock and then saying the village has to pay for my dinner. So if you're gone, if you're not back, before 7, you get dinner, right? That's really what
Yeah.
it should say, something to that effect. Huh?
That was how it was before.
What does departure mean? I mean, you're leaving, like before?
Well, see, that's the departure part is what, I can see
Yeah.
I can see the return, this makes sense, so dinner may be claimed if the return is after 7 p.m., so you get to have dinner. I don't see why this departure is in here. If departure is before 5, what does that mean? Departure from where?
That's why I changed it. It didn't seem clear, but
Departure from your house? Departure from somewhere?
You gotta run out?
Just seems to me if you're gone for a partial day and you're not back till 8 o'clock at night, well, they should pay for dinner, right?
that would technically be a full day.
Well, it depends on when they left, right?
Yeah.
So if they left at 3 in the afternoon and they come back at 8 at night, that's not a full day, right?
Right.
So they should still get
They'll
dinner.
get dinner.
Well, so it should
Say
say,
left where?
so I think you
Not
should,
us.
forget about the departure time. Just say, you know, if your return is,
It tells you down below, Carl, the next line,
yeah,
no, trip departure or trip return refers to your work location.
well, for mileage purposes, it says that. It doesn't say that for meal purposes, it says it's for mileage purposes.
And it's at the village clerk's discretion.
No, it made, to me, the old one where it says trip departure or trip return shall refer to either workstation or place of residence. That makes a little more sense than saying for mileage purposes, because who cares for mileage purposes about when you can have breakfast, lunch, or dinner, when you get paid for breakfast, lunch, or dinner? Mileage doesn't matter. It's the hours that matter, where you're coming, where you're coming from. Other than that, and I apologize, I only looked at this this afternoon, so I wasn't able to get my comments to the village clerk sooner.
Sorry. We can just, honestly, it's the fact that most major travel has already happened besides me and NICOM, but we can just vote on this next time, and I can make the change. I think the major part was that we really need receipts.
Yeah, the top part's fine, it's just that,
Right.
it's just the meal, the partial day meal reimbursement needs to be massaged a little bit.
Right. I would agree to that. If you look the rest of it,
The rest of it's fine.
the note, cost of a meal included in a conference registration fee and/or provided by the conference or training, this should be noted. Meal is ineligible for meal reimbursement, such as coming up at the NICOM training. They include breakfast and lunch, and I believe
Most meals are covered.
most meals, yes.
Yeah, except like fruit.
And again, that would be ineligible for meal reimbursement if it was covered. Travel arrangements, again, made by front office staff, and then the unauthorized expenses are pretty much the same as they were before. And I think the problem is we had to fine tune this a little bit, because one of the problems that we had was that there was simply reimbursement for a meal based on the per diem rate. There was no receipt that came with it. And if alcohol was bought, one did not know that it was part of the meal. And the expense prohibition, part of that is for alcoholic beverages. That is something that is not what the village pays for.
Right.
So this has kind of focused more on providing receipts so that there's accountability for what is paid, reimbursement. Okay. So we'll table this, we'll come back to it next time. We'll work on that middle part for the meals if we do not have a full working day travel. Okay? All right. So table that until we adopted the first part. Table this until 9:13. Next, we have a resolution to adopt sections 5-6, which is an amendment, payment in advance of audit of claims for specific bills. Oh, okay, thank you. We need to make a motion to table that item. So, can I have a motion to table the adoption of section 616, entitled Travel Policy for the Village of Webster, until the next meeting, which would be September 13th.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
Trustee Lauer,
Aye.
trustee Belkane,
Aye.
trustee Abolito,
Aye.
Mayor Byers.
Aye.
Motion passes.
had a problem, I believe, we were not supposed to be paying credit card bills. We had made that change. I'm not exactly sure when, how many years ago, a couple of years ago, because a couple of times credit card bills were late being paid, and we were getting interest charge on them. So we included them in this advanced payment, but apparently we cannot do that. So this is a amendment to section 5.6, payment in advance of audit of claims for specific bills. And it says, whereas the Board of Trustees is determined to authorize payment in advance of audit of claims for public utility services, postage, freight and expense charges, health and dental insurance, passport services, and deposit refunds on payment of outstanding bills. And whereas all such claims shall be presented at the regular meeting for audit, and whereas the claimant and officer incurring or approving the same shall be jointly and severally liable for any amount disallowed by the Board of Trustees, now therefore be it resolved. Section 1, the Board of Trustees authorizes payment in advance of audit of claims for public utility services, postage, freight and expense charges, passport services, and all such claims shall be presented at the next regular meeting for audit, and claimant and officer incurring or approving the same shall be jointly and severally liable for any amount disallowed by the Board of Trustees. And section 2, this resolution shall take effect immediately.
That was the original.
The original was, we did this on 4/23/2015. So that was a couple of years ago, but we're amending it now. Okay? So we are taking out, what was in there was we could pay in advance for credit cards and charge accounts. That has been removed. So can I have a motion to approve this amendment of section 5.6, payment in advance of audit of claims for specific bills?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Trustee Abolito?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Mayor Barnes?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next is a resolution to allow Mayor Byers, myself, to sign the annual software contract for software support with Williamson Law Book Company, Buildings and Code Enforcement, in the amount of $624. This is an annual software support contract, building and codes enforcement software. It'll run from 9/1, September 1 through August 31st of 2019.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
It'll make those job easier.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Trustee Abolito?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Next, we have a resolution to authorize the village clerk to receive comp time for Association of Mayors clerk duties as she is the secretary for 2019. I would open that up for discussion. There are,
7 days,
pardon?
7 meeting days.
There are 7, actually the annual dinner is something that Webster does every 10 years. However, the meetings there are 6 of them, they are bi-monthly. And they are dinner meetings. The minutes are provided to the mayors prior to and accepted at the next bi-monthly.
What is the average meeting time, sir?
Average meeting time is probably from, I would say on an average, 6:45, 6:30, 6:45 until, depends on what's there, 8:30.
So 3.5, maybe 4 sometimes.
No.
No?
And then if there's a speaker, they said it can be up to 4 hours.
Never, well, in my limited experience, I haven't done that for 4 hours.
Will you get content for doing the secretary work and village secretary work?
Well, it won't be done. Not really on village time. I mean, sort of.
I mean, so when you prepare the minutes, you're gonna do that at home or something, or after work?
No, that will be, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. This is only for when I'm at the meeting, I apologize.
Oh, it's because the resolution says duties, so duties is fairly broad. Well, look, I don't want you guys to argue later when she's asking for comp
I'm not
time
gonna
for
do that.
preparing minutes.
I'm not
If you're asking for comp time for the time associated with attending the meetings, then that's what the resolution should say.
So it'll just be
If that's what you
taking
want,
minutes.
see, I didn't know what you wanted it limited to. It says duties. So duties could be preparing the minutes. Duties could be lots of things. Duties could be making phone calls to set up the dinner that's gonna be held in the village. I don't, is it gonna be catered? Somebody's gotta do all that stuff.
It's me, but that's, so I'm sorry, the annual dinner will not be included in that. We have to do that anyway, so that won't be included. But I meant just me taking the minutes during that meeting.
So comp time is for attendance at the meetings.
Yes,
Okay.
Are you a non-exempt employee under the labor law?
yes.
Or are you an exempt employee?
I'm exempt,
You are exempt, okay.
yes.
I'm not a big fan of comp time, but I understand, you're taking time out of your day to attend and
It's an
partake.
extra night that I have to, we already have 3 meetings a month, and then this is an extra, and it's a Thursday as well, it's an extra Thursday.
I mean, being a salaried employee, I'm saying, you leave early that day, those days leave early, or,
Yeah, but we can never really do that, unfortunately. But, I mean, I
I think
understand.
it happens, or you could come in late, I think it happens. My concern about receiving comp time is that this is a dinner. It is paid for, and therefore it's comp time associated with a dinner. I know it's time, but it's only once every 2 months, and it's only for 6 times. It won't happen again until 2001, or 2021. 2020, going back in time, 2021. So I have a concern with that.
The only reason I even brought it up in the meeting was because the secretary, they get comp time, because technically it's not village work. It's more time than I have to come,
That's correct, but I know that in terms of precedence, as the secretary to the bid, which is also not technically village work, we are part of the bid, was secretary for a year plus, and was there every month at the bid meetings taking the reporting, and that was for an hour and a half, probably, and, or an hour, and that required write-up of minutes as well, and there was no time to do it.
Were those meetings or bid meetings outside of normal business
Excuse me,
hours?
not bid, WIDA, I apologize, WIDA, which we are a voting part of.
Are those meetings though outside of normal?
Yes, they were
Business hours.
7:30 in the morning,
Right, so similar.
somewhat similar.
it's just, in the office, it is hard for us to be able to leave early and do stuff like that. So it is an extra night that, I don't get a lot of time to be home either, so and it is volunteer. It's not that I'm trying to complain, and,
Well, your time's important, I understand,
One Tuesday and then 2 Tuesdays every month, it does add up. I mean, and we are very busy because we're a small office, so it is hard for us to leave early. I totally understand, but,
well,
and it's not like I'm getting paid, for it, we don't get overtime or anything like that, and we mostly put in over 80 hours. So it's an extra thing that I have to do. Plus, sometimes it's in Churchville, which is fun. It's like to drive.
Mumford.
yeah, I know time's important, I mean, I don't know what's the fair way, you're not a big fan of the comp time, Jerry, other than at first, but you should be compensated one way or the other, whether you come in late or early.
Well,
or-
this,
I
yeah,
don't
salary
know.
employment, it's give and take, but Heather does bring up a good point, that it's technically not village work, you could say, when you just compared it to, but that was also, isn't that in the normal business hours? No.
Well, because Daryl's the president this year, that means I get to be the secretary, so thanks, Daryl.
So this is all Daryl's fault.
So maybe Daryl should just compensate you.
Daryl, take out for drinks afterwards every time.
Put it on his credit card.
Yeah,
What about dinner?
that's already covered there.
That's right,
Drinks afterwards,
yeah.
coffee and dessert.
How much is that an hour with the contract?
I wouldn't, and if you need me to put in a stipulation where I'm not trying to like cash it out or something, I just want a little extra time.
Understand. Yeah, come to an agreement, it's
Carl?
fair, and
I didn't mean to stress you guys out, so.
I think that Heather should be compensated for what she's done.
But just because you're sitting next to her, she could.
I'm getting it from both sides.
That's a rough end.
I think that's fair. I don't know, but
Don,
we're talking
that's all
about,
to say.
we're talking about 3 hours a month, right?
It doesn't,
Every 2
look, to me.
3 hours every 2 months.
I have no opinion as to whether she should get the comp time or not. I just wanted to define what duties was, so that if you're gonna authorize it, you know what the heck you're authorizing, so when you get those comp time reports, you know what it's for. But whether you give it to her or not is not a legal decision, it's up to you guys whether you wanna do that or not.
You just wanted your professional.
And I don't know, if she, and this is, again, not legal, but if the reason that Heather is the secretary is because Daryl is the president, it's not like she had a lot of choice in the matter, I guess.
Right.
Because it sounds, well, if Daryl didn't either, but it sounds like whoever, the village clerk of the village who's now the president sort of follows along is now the secretary, you know? I guess that's the sort of the
Well, it makes
tradition
sense.
of this association.
Well, you don't wanna have the Spencer Board secretary do, just
Well, and the original person, because I just started, they actually picked someone else, but she's from Sweden and her husband has stage 4 cancer, so back on.
3 hours every 2 months, Heather said.
And only
I
for
don't
this
think
year.
that's a big deal.
Only for this year. And then another 10 years, then I'll be
we're
back.
talking 18 hours then,
Isn't there,
right? 6 times 6 meetings?
isn't there something in the, I don't know if it's in the, didn't we put something in the policy manual about how the superintendent of public works and the clerk and the treasurer don't get comp time?
Right. And
That was done, I believe, in 2012.
Right. That change was made.
That change was made. It was then
So-
that they received 1 week, the treasurer and
They
the
got a
clerk.
vacation
Right.
in lieu of that.
And Jake went up a step in salary.
Right.
And that was rescinded, I believe, 2 years or 3 years later.
The-
You know, so if you wanted to, and again, this is up to Heather, if you wanted to stipulate that the comp time, has to be used up by the expiration of her term as secretary, and it's, you know, she can't cash it out.
That's fine, absolutely. And the other thing too is that they do get mileage, but I'm not taking that. I was gonna hope I can get a ride with you.
So you can take them around.
And
You
I'm
can
gonna
take
They
Doug
get a
and
nice
Miles.
dinner out of it too.
And she's full of surprises.
look at, when it's in Webster, you're gonna stay here. I'm not going to get you in the back. There can be stipulations to that. So we would need to stipulate what that would be.
So any minutes will only be done during my office, and nothing will be done.
And they shouldn't take too long, because we don't very often have, I mean, you wouldn't do the verbatim kinds of things of a
No.
speaker, so.
No, they leave that off. They just say who was the speaker.
Shall we refine that and bring that back?
You want a table, you're saying? and
Yeah.
kind of digest it a little bit?
Yeah.
All right.
Put it together into what the, what we would look for, something, and then as Don suggested, that it be used up by the end of the term. Without carryover for it.
Right.
Give her a couple days off or something.
Well, because if I get the comp hours, then I can write that down. I'm taking these hours, I can leave. You know, if I'm saying, oh, I'm okay, I'll leave a couple hours early, it never happens. You know, we're busy.
All right, yeah,
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
Can you table that and then put it together?
Appreciate it.
All right, can I have a motion to table this resolution for further discussion and clarification, and we'll bring it back September 13th.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Abolito?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
All right.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
By the way, the annual dinner will be hosted by Webster, and we'll have an early invitation, can plan on it. What's the date, Heather?
The date is January 19th. It's on that schedule. Where'd it go?
On that
What
schedule?
do you have, Webster Golf Club, or you have?
Actually,
We're not sure.
Oh,
we have a couple places.
January 8th.
Monroe Country Club or Midvale.
Yeah, I always have them in, a lot of times in Midvale,
Yeah, we're trying
which
to
is a nice setup. I mean,
do some are a little bit more local, or central for everybody.
Because I know a couple of
What
you
date?
It was
did
out
want to
in
go all the way out
Brentford
to Ogden last
Yeah.
year,
What is the
which
date?
is at the far end of the spectrum,
I think you
so.
should go to Mumford,
It was on.
Mumford?
do it at the museum.
If Burke's Catering.
Burks.
Burke's
to
to
go.
Caters.
Go to 2 months, you can do it in my commercial space. It's almost empty.
All right,
Another Heather bill on here.
another one. Agenda item 10, resolution to authorize the village clerk
Get up on the.
using her comp time to attend New York Conference to attend New York Conference of Mayors Law Training School, September 24th to 28th, not to exceed $1,742.28, including hotel food not covered by the conference and mileage and tolls.
One thing though.
Where is it?
About the mileage and tolls, that's only if the Equinox gets fixed, then it won't need the mileage or tolls.
I think the Equinox should be fixed by
Do you wanna take a test drive in that tomorrow, Daryl?
then. Sure.
Okay.
Ask Will. How's the Equinox? You ever get to drive it?
Once in a great while I'll drive it. But I'm a guy, I don't.
Is it
pay
mechanically sound? I know that there were some issues with it, but you went out with Jim, right?
Mhm.
Went out with Clancy?
It definitely needs work, and he's looking into it.
Okay. All right, well,
We'd like to replace it at some point down the road.
I'd like to replace all of them. Anybody had a chance to look it up?
I don't know why you didn't drive the dump truck.
There's
He
a
actually
lot
said
that's there. Where is this going to be held?
Street sweeper.
it's in Lake Placid.
Lake
Street
Placid.
sweeper.
He actually said I could take a truck.
Good.
Heather pulls up
We
in
have
the
a
dump
van.
truck.
Did you see how big that truck is?
What's the agenda? Does it have an agenda?
Yes.
What's happening?
That's like Friday and Saturday
It
nights.
has a whole day of financial classes.
Big place is really nice.
Don,
What?
you know, I say lots
There's
of.
lots of stuff. I saw the agenda.
Yes.
There's, especially for, you know, a new clerk, it's probably well worth it.
Okay.
They have lots and lots of topics, from, you know, running village elections, to financial stuff, to FOIL, to all sorts of things.
And all the meals are included except a breakfast, lunch, and one dinner.
Before 7 though.
Yes.
Yeah, before 7.
What I would ask is, and I have asked this before, and it was done, and I will ask for it again. What I would like upon your return is that you would put together the PowerPoints that are made available to you into a binder for that information to be kept on file here, available to anyone who wishes to look at it for general information. We have one now that was done by two individuals who went a couple of years ago, so I would ask that this be done again
Okay. Yes, sir.
in terms of my people for it. So we do have, and I do believe that this is important, this would be Heather's first time going, but it also gives accreditation for the National Clerk something or other.
Yes. Registered municipal clerk.
Yes.
Very good.
And also, because I was my first time, I got a $150 discount on the registration.
Good. So, can I have a motion to authorize the village clerk to attend the New York Conference of Mayors Fall Training School in Lake Placid, September 24th to 28th, not to exceed $1,740.28?
No, I make that motion.
I'll second it.
Trustee Lauer,
Aye.
trustee Alito,
Aye.
trustee Belkane,
Aye.
Mayor Byers.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And if you go to NICOM and take a look at the conference, you'll see they'll have an agenda, schedule of things for the different days, and they are packed. It's very difficult to go to all the things because they'll run two great programs at the same time, 3 to 4:30, 5 o'clock. So what you can do, however, they do make PowerPoints available for those classes that are coincidental, at the same time, and you can probably get that information. Okay, next agenda item 11, moving on, authorize Mayor Byers to sign applications for the village insurance policy. This is different than what we were talking about, is that correct or not? Can we do that first?
Yes.
And talk about the policy update to value, what is that one? Because one I want to talk about is the change in terms of adding the cyber.
Yeah.
So would that be 12 or 11?
So, I put it, we had to specify it a little bit. This is the proposal for the insurance. But we don't know, the cost actually might go down or increase a little bit depending on what your decision is regarding flood insurance and adding cyber insurance, which Mayor Byers and I went to the meeting with them, and we ultimately decided that maybe we don't need as much flood insurance.
So is this
And
750
earthquake.
price?
Hmm?
750 price, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first one, you just have to decide if you want to go with as it is now, which is without, the same as it was last year, without the cyber insurance. And if you do, then we can go ahead and sign the agreement as it is, or they send us a separate agreement if you would like to make the change, and then we'll have to get a new invoice.
So, in a nutshell, we have a lot of money, we don't have a lot, but we have $1 million policy on earthquake and flood. And I think that in terms of what we were looking at, I asked if we went to $500,000, $500,000 on earthquake and flood insurance. We haven't had a catastrophic flood. Most of it would probably run off if we did over the 404 out here, Ridge Road, go over the ridge and on down. Earthquake, certainly it's a possibility, we live in a fault, but if we have a major one that's over $1 million, we're probably in trouble anyways. But what I looked at is I asked them to go from $1 million to $500,000, and how much would we save, and we would save approximately $530, something like that. They talked about the fact that, and we talked about it last year, I asked to bring it up again this year, cyber insurance, we do not have any. And one of the things which is significant these days is the emails, the phishing, and all the things that are in emails, ransomware. If we get ransomed, then that could cost quite a bit. And so they have two parts. One, we could get stage 1, I believe I put that out to you guys. That covers ransomware, it covers, being held hostage, and those kinds of things. Second, the full, or part 3, is if we had a breach of data like, somebody's medical files or social security numbers or whatever, like Target has had with all of the credit card information, those kind of things. We do not keep that. All of our personnel files are not online that anybody could break into. We don't have that. They're held in files that are paper. So my feeling was that we didn't need the full, but we probably needed, protection against cyber attack, ransom. So that's in terms of reducing the earthquake and the flood insurance. That provides most of the money, except for like $200 and some to cover us for the cyber. So it's a very small increase that we would have in terms of the insurance. Otherwise, there's about a 3% or 4%, I think, increase over the year before because of valuations and all that kind of thing.
So what's the cost on that cyber?
I believe that
You're saving us, if you go to 500,000, you're saving us like 5.25, I think you said.
correct.
Does that cover the sewer treatment plant or just the village office buildings,
What?
the $1 million?
It- It's probably for all in the, I don't know if the treatment plant, because the building itself sits up and the stream is down below far enough, yes. We probably would lose maybe the drying beds that are glass enclosed and maybe the barn that's down there.
We're still using the drying beds though, right? So
We are.
my only concern would be. again,
Still $500,000, would we be able to build that building?
Well, I'm not thinking so much about the building, but if it flooded and that went into the storm and the amount of money we would have to pay to.
That's probably not even covered.
Oh, you don't think so?
I don't think that's covered under this flood insurance.
Oh, okay.
Generally, any kind of environmental hazard is not covered by any
Oh, okay.
insurance.
So that's where.
If the sewage treatment plant had some incident and contaminated this, that, or the other thing, there's no coverage for that.
Well, it would be covered by FEMA or like Set up their tents down there.
Not necessarily.
Trailers.
And this is the proposal for the,
So what was the cost for the side work? If you're gonna save us $525, dropping to $500,000, how much was the cost?
You didn't break it down. No.
right here.
No, that's for the whole thing. 1,300 was for the whole thing. 700 and
Right.
some dollars. Do you have that?
No, what was 1,300?
Approximately $735. So we're looking at a couple, $200 plus an increase over. And what we need to approve, without that increase would be $51,880.99. That is the total for the insurance a total package, which is up, I believe, from 49 last year. 49. So it's an added $200 plus $250 for cyber insurance, which I think
What's the effective date for the village's insurance? Does it
Sep-
coincide with the fiscal
September
year?
10th.
Pardon me?
September 10th.
So it doesn't even coincide with the fiscal year. What was budgeted for insurance this year?
Around the same,
49,000?
I believe it was almost exactly the same, because we originally had thought that the workers' comp insurance was gonna go down, but that's not, we think it's gonna be about the same, so.
We probably knew it was going up to 51, right, or no? They just threw it at us?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was possibly a small
You're kind
increase.
of at a disadvantage because the budget year is done so, the budget planning is done so far in advance from insurance isn't until September,
I know Chris definitely knew that it wasn't gonna change much. They did tell her that, and it really didn't. It was like,
Well, 3 or 4%.
yeah. So I think,
So we
so
should
she did account for
figure
that.
that in.
Yes, so she did
You
account for
probably-
that.
Yeah, for a little increase.
Yeah.
Work something out with Smith so we can gradually, instead of whacking us with 4, because we didn't know about it.
Well, and at some point, I don't know when, every 3 to 5 years, you should get 3 quotes for
We,
insurance anyhow.
We budgeted $50,992.
All right, so that's pretty close, so that's 51.
And this is 5180, so it's slightly under $1,000 that we're on.
I support Daryl's 50. I think we should definitely add the cyber and reduce the flood and earthquake. Yeah.
$200. Okay. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
He asked.
He's trying to think.
I'm trying to decide if it's agenda item 11 or 12.
So 11 is just for you to sign the policy.
11 is to sign the policy.
Yes.
However, 12 is for the
Sign the
updates,
invoice.
is that correct?
Yes,
Which would be the change
yes,
that we're doing.
yes. Well, you're gonna pay the invoices.
So you should probably still do 11 first, to
Yeah.
authorize the mayor to sign the applications as discussed, with lowering the flood and adding the cyber. And then do 12 to payment when you get, subject to getting the invoice for those changes,
Right.
which you don't actually have yet, I guess.
We had to, so based on, because it's effective coming up really quick, there wasn't gonna
Yeah.
be another meeting in
Right.
between, so we had to write it a little bit odd,
Yeah.
just in case you decided to go with
Because
the
13
changes.
is after the 10th, and we need to pay them.
Right.
Right. So with those changes that we have discussed, resolution authorized Mayor Byers to sign applications for the village insurance policy. Have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Trustee
Aye.
Webster? Trustee Abolito?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And then second, agenda item 12, resolution to authorize payment of insurance invoice pending decision on policy updates to value. Those policy updates would be to reduce the earthquake flood insurance from $1 million to $500,000 and to then purchase cyber insurance #1 package for primarily ransomware attack, cyber attack.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Trustee Belkane?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Trustee Alito?
Aye.
Mayor Barnes?
Aye.
And they also said it would cover if we needed to hire someone to go through, if we did have a breach, it would cover that. We said that.
I think it's good. We put it off last year. I deferred it to this year for further discussion. Wanted to know more about it.
I know you brought it up a few times.
I have a question. I think that with the computer company that we have that supplies us with all our hardware and software and all that stuff, don't they have firewalls and guarantees against this sort of malware and all that stuff?
Well, I think a lot of it can come through a very innocuous where
Yeah.
I know they have a guard, and I'm seeing quarantine stuff all the time that goes there. But,
It's not so much, it's generally through emails. They can't guarantee that an employee is gonna click on some link in an email that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not so much surfing the web for something or getting it off a website, it's usually through an email.
Okay.
And they're very clever at it. It can
Yeah,
be
you
one
get those
word
emails
change,
that
it
look
could
like
be
they're coming from a bank or something.
Yeah.
a capital letter where it shouldn't be, or whatever, and
See those all the time.
More than the house.
all right. Next, agenda item 13, this is to resolution to authorize Mayor Byers to sign a maintenance agreement for stormwater management facilities. I believe, Will, you've been working hard on stormwater
Yes, sir.
things, right?
This is when Mr. Chambray built the building, he bought the lots over on Barrett Drive, and he built the building over there with the intention of building another building on the vacant lot that's currently there. And so you have the medical office building that's there now, but because of the size of the lot, the two lots that are there, they had to build a stormwater facility, which is the pond in the back. We never, it's our policy not to take ponds. I mean, the town took ponds, but then they're starting to move more towards these stormwater maintenance agreements. We always do maintenance agreements, and just to refresh your memory, all the maintenance agreement does is basically, every year I send a letter to the property owners that have ponds, and I ask them to have the pond inspected to make sure that the pond is still functioning the way it was originally designed and engineered. And oftentimes in the 10 years I've been doing it, probably about 3 or 4 times I've had to actually go in and clean out the pond because of the sediment or siltation that goes into the pond. So what it does is the agreement allows us to, monitor the pond, enter the property if need be, and if on, sending the letter for the annual inspection, it's not taken care of, it allows us to enter the property through easement, and then if need be, correct any deficiencies, so that, and that would be charged back to the owner. And then if and when this gets signed, it gets filed with the county clerk's office, and it becomes part of the deed, so that it goes with the property owners.
It's Will's standard agreement that I've looked at it, and it covers the village, it protects the village. It's got an indemnification and hold harmless clause if, someone falls in the pond or is fishing in the pond and gets hurt or whatever, it's, they don't come after the village because, A, it's not on village property, but somebody said, well, the village approved it, as part of the planning process, but this, they agreed to indemnify indemnify the village for things like that.
It says here, in the event the required maintenance is not performed by the owner, which you would then recommend for them to do, the Village of Webster shall have the right but not obligation to enter the property for the purpose of performing such maintenance. Costs shall be billed, okay, costs shall be billed. All right, so, I see no particular problem with that. So may I have a motion to authorize the mayor to sign a maintenance agreement for stormwater management facilities with the medical office park at Fair Drive?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Trustee Abolito?
Aye.
Trustee Valteen?
Aye.
Trustee Lauer?
Aye.
Mayor Byers?
Aye.
Motion passes.
And part of the reason why it took so long is because they weren't sure the time frame for when they were going to develop the other property. But whenever you have like a subdivision or any kind of new development go in that requires stormwater prevention plans, they have to get a permit from the DEC to do that. Well, right now, the permit is still open, and they're not doing anything with the land, so it already has grass. It's over 80% covered that way, so none of the soil is going to leave the site. And they just decided, well, they're probably not going to do anything with the land for a long time, so what they're going to send me is what's called a notice of termination, that I sign off saying, yes, the site is okay to release it from the permit from the DEC. So this is part of the process. So this gets you warmed up for Maplewood when the time comes for that agreement.
Thanks.
Okay, and we're moving on to the attorney. Don, do you have anything for us?
Yeah. Brittany Woods again. I had a conversation this afternoon and with the attorney for Mr. Van Epps. And Will is going to love this, but the bank that he's getting his financing from, that Lake Shore Savings Bank, just won't issue him a letter of credit, because they don't do it. So when we requested, we want a letter of credit, their comeback is, we can't give you a letter of credit. And he doesn't want to go to another bank because he got such a great deal at this savings bank. So, so what the proposal is, and I didn't say one way or the other if this was acceptable or not, but this is just in theory, that the loan documents, and the loan is supposed to be dispersed after certain work is done. So the loan would have some language in it where funds would be assigned to the village if the things that normally would be covered by the letter of credit are not completed. So instead of paying the money to Mr. Van Epps, it would be paid to the village. The village would get that work done. And I discussed the issue of the phasing of the project and how that complicated issues, because his funding is only for phase one, and he's got to get 70% occupancy before they'll talk to him about funding phase two. So now apparently Mr. Van Epps is agreeable to have all of the site work, which would include the roads, the driveways, the parking lots, the sidewalks, the sewers, and the water, for both phase one and phase two done during phase one, so that it would be covered under his initial funding if he doesn't get it done. So that's sort of the proposal. I'd have to actually see the documents before I could comment on, comment on it. But the other thing that Will and Jake are going to have to take a close look at is, he sent, and I think he sent Will, you sent copies to the board too about, you know, he's dropped, his engineer's estimate originally for all the work was $1,059,000. Well, now he's got it down to $710,000. I don't know if this includes both phases, and I don't know why some things went down so much. Like, he's getting a deal, I guess, now on sanitary cleanouts, because before, the cleanouts were gonna cost, you know, $800 each. Now he can get them for $250 each. You know, I don't, yeah, and then he's got the laterals, 6-inch laterals, 16, we're gonna be $1,000 each. Well, now he can get them for $15 each, which doesn't make any sense to me. So you're gonna have to go through this, and he's left off nothing about water service. Before there was $133,000 for water. This doesn't have anything for water. They've cut out for the earthwork and erosion control, whereas before he was gonna have $132,000 worth of cost. Now it's down to $25,000. So he's obviously cut out a lot of that too. So I'm not so sure this $710,000 is gonna pass muster or not. But I told the attorney, that's not up to me, that's not a legal issue, that's gonna be up to the Public Works Department and the Planning Board. The Planning Board ultimately is gonna have to weigh in on the amount. But I suppose as long as all of the infrastructure for both phases can get paid out of his loan for phase one, in theory, I think it should work. And Will just have to coordinate his inspections of the infrastructure with the banks. They're gonna have to hire their own inspector, another independent engineer, before they'll disperse the money. So he'll have to just coordinate that they do their inspections at the same time, so there's not any issue as to, you know, Will says it wasn't done, he says it was done. If they're both standing there together, I think you could probably agree on whether the work was done or not, and done correctly, properly. So in theory, I think it could work, but it needs a little bit more fine tuning.
It needs to be tweaked a little.
Yeah.
So let's just go back to the planning board. So the planning board will now look at the fact that originally it was $1,000 and now it's $15,000.
Well, I think even before it gets to the planning board, I think Will and Jake need to go through it and then talk to, you know, because it was submitted by their engineers, it was T.Y. Lin. I don't know the name, I forget the name of the engineer, but they, you know,
Right.
Will or Jake may want to have a conversation right with the engineer asking why, you know, before it was $1,000 for a lateral, now it's $15. How can you get a lab sewer lateral for $15?
I know most of the engineers for T.Y. Lin, and I
Yeah.
almost guarantee you, we're gonna have an interesting conversation.
Yeah, some things might have gotten changed, and maybe the engineer didn't know about it or something, but. Because I don't know how you get a sewer lateral for $15, the cost of that.
You can manipulate my numbers to come up with anything. There's a lot of manipulation.
So they're gonna, my feeling is that it's gonna be back up to the $1 million range. But, which is okay, you know, the attorney, I told him that, and so he's, you know, his proposal was that the village would have the right to $1 million of the loan proceeds to cover those things. If he never completes them. So in essence, it wouldn't be a loan to the village, but the bank would, then they're stuck trying to collect it from Mr. Van Epps, which if he hasn't completed it, I don't know, but that's their issue. I don't know how they're gonna do that. But it would have to be, you know, unconditional that they would pay it over to the village without any recourse to the village. The village obviously isn't gonna pay it back. The village is gonna use the money to get the infrastructure completed.
Sounds pretty shaky to me.
So this is going back to the planning board in September?
Yes,
Is he coming? Is he asked to come?
they are on the agenda for September for a extension of their 1-year approval.
But I'm not sure they should do that until we have this issue ironed out. So it may or may not be on for September 6th. Because that's the planning board, that's what they're gonna wanna know.
Yeah.
This is really the only thing that's holding up construction of the project. So the bottom line may be, how much does this board want to see that project get off the ground or not? Because you can't force Van Epps to go, well, maybe you can force him by saying, forget it, we're not gonna go with anything other than the line of credit, then he's gonna have to go to another bank, and he'll be back at square one again. In which case, he could say, well, heck with it, I'm not even gonna build it, I'll just sell the parcel to somebody else. 'Cause he has ownership of it now.
So, thank you for the update.
The other thing we talked about.
For extension, right?
The other thing we talked about was, as an alternative, was a performance bond. But Scott Sindelnik, that's the attorney, knowing Mr. Van Epps, he'd balk at whatever the premium is for the bond. But then Scott said, well, he's actually borrowing, his loan commitment from Lake Shore Savings Bank is $600,000 more than what ESL was willing to loan him. So he's like, well, maybe he can use some of that $600,000 extra to pay for the premium for the performance bond. I said, well, that would be a lot easier. Just get us a performance bond, which is like an insurance policy, and then this will go easy. It's just agreeing on the amount of the bond, whether it's the $710,000 or the $1,050,000 something. So we could insist on the performance bond, which is the easier way to go, but he's just got to foot, and I don't know what they cost. They're typically, I think there's something like 10% of whatever the cost of the, whatever they're supposed to cover, the premium's like 10% or something like that. He's gonna have to look at, figure that out. So, that's all I have.
The ongoing saga, Britton Woods.
Yeah.
Originally, they were supposed to begin, I believe it was in May.
Yes.
Yep.
And everything was set up and ready to go, but, all right. Anything from the front office, clerk?
We already went over all our stuff.
Pretty much. Department of Public Works and Code Enforcement. Will?
I'll put on my code enforcement hat first. Just the typical report. A lot of complaints and violations we got taken care of. I think I can't remember if I mentioned last month or not that the Village Bakery's open. Did I mention that or not? So that's running really well. They're doing excellent.
Then you need to get there before, I think it's 8 o'clock if you want much in the way of bread. It sells out very
Well, I figure with our new policy for meals, if I get there before, between 6 and 9, cover. But no, their food was excellent. Cost is reasonable with what you get. So, but everybody I talked to that was there, and they loved it. So they're doing really well. I know that eventually, I don't think they're going to do it this year, but next year they're going to expand the outside a little bit and change some of the parking area to where they have outdoor seating, which means they're going to relocate the dumpster and relocate 4 parking spots. So, but when that comes, they'll have to go to planning for a site plan change and everything. So.
I think the anticipation was to move some of that parking down near the Harmony House. There's an area there just at the base of the berm.
That's correct. Yeah, right where that the vacant parcel is, where it slopes down, they were going to cut into that and put some parking in there.
No more sand monuments then.
Yeah.
Sand sculpture.
Oh, yeah.
That was awesome. That was awesome.
They're going to take that much. I don't think they're going to take that.
That was good.
What about JoJo's with any progress?
I didn't even know what JoJo's is, honestly.
The restaurant going in the front,
Yeah, well, that's what everybody keeps telling me about. Nobody's come to me yet.
by any other stores, or any,
No, nothing yet. Well, the 2 Zen chicks is now 1 Zen chick. Apparently they had a falling out, so we're trying to figure out what to do with that.
Everything's up in the air.
So,
I think there's something similar to Art Stop, possibly coming in according to Matt, having to do with art.
Local artists.
well, there's,
Is
I
that
don't know if
true?
it's the same spot, there's a little spot around the corner on Lapham. A woman just bought that, and she's teaching art, and they get to take the artwork with them. Somehow wine is involved in it, so painting and drinking is always a good mix, I guess. Abstract art, that's what it would end up with me. But other than that, I'm still working on the Unified Solar Permit Code. We're getting really close to wrapping it up. I just gotta hit some of the tables and change it according to what our code says. So I should be done with that in a couple of weeks. And then Brittany Woods, John already covered that aspect of it. So we'll see what happens with that. And as far as Public Works, this will be the shortest Public Works presentation we probably ever had, because I know how to say yes in less than 25 words. I'm pretty well pleased with what's going on with the North Avenue Connector project. Somebody said we probably should have had a contest with, on the website for naming what the pavilion is, because everybody, what is that? What is, how much did that cost? What is that for? So every time somebody calls me, I make something up, which
Watch
is
the
fun.
snowplows go by.
But everything else came out good. Even the crazy median came out nice. The light posts look great, sidewalks look great. Looking forward to see what the sign looks like with the LED and everything in there, and then the other side further down. So, and then we did several roads, micro paving. So we got a lot of those taken care of, was it last week or earlier this week? Trying to think what else.
You're doing the coating over the
Yeah,
road surface.
that's the micro paving, yeah. And then I know that we're gonna be doing Curtis pretty soon, we've got all the gutters in there. Other than that, that's all I can tell you.
New tree went in on Lapham, for the one that was mistakenly cut down,
Yeah,
4 feet from a fire hydrant and under power lines. Does that make much sense? Probably not.
what kind of tree is it?
Maple.
So,
So,
give it about
it
5
probably
years.
needs to be moved, and I think we'll have to maybe them to come back.
Who planted it? If you don't know.
If we did,
Oh, okay,
if we did, I
Oh.
don't know, but I don't think so.
okay.
Could be the same people that mistakenly cut it down. All right, well, thank you.
Yes, sir.
In terms of sewer, the joint study that was proposed and undertaken by the town and village, the town did the work, has gone now to Clem Chunk for his opinion or his response to it. So it will be coming back to us from him shortly. And I think I passed on to all of you the, what I received, the report. And so he's taking a look at it and he will give us his opinion of it. I have asked Peter Baker, who is their chief engineer, the contact person. I have asked him for the bottom line of what it's going to cost the village residents. It will be part of the discussion that will be coming up. It will be held by the town. There is a timeline that we'll make an announcement of, but right now we're just kind of digesting all of what was presented. So, not going to comment on that right now because we haven't really had an opportunity to look at that and get it. So that would be, other than that, I don't know anything else for sewer. What I would like then is this. We received, as you know, we're dealing with Facebook Live, and we did receive a call-in or I think whatever they're called. However, just for everybody's information, and I'd like to take a moment to a moment of silence and memory. Yesterday, August 22nd, one of the founding members of the startup of the Webster Museum, Thelma Semler Vandermally, passed away. She was 94, and in 1991 she was Woman of the Year in the town, and she will be missed. The Webster Museum and all that it does is a good mainstay for the town as well as for the village. So I would like to take a moment just to pay our respects, a moment of silence in memory of Thelma Vandermally. Thank you. If you wish to pay respects, I believe that there are calling hours from 11 to 1 tomorrow at the Willard Scott Funeral Home.
It's in the paper today.
Today's paper. All right. Anybody have any other items you'd like to bring before the board?
On Monday, we're going down to sewer to make sure that, just take a look at their system, make sure there's any, a gentleman's meeting us there, see if it needs any updates or anything like that. To the computer system there.
To the computer system?
Yeah.
Okay. Because we have a report on the update
No,
of the system
not
itself, but
The
on the
computer
computer
system.
system. Okay. All right, good. All right. Well, if there's no other items, then I'll entertain a motion to close the meeting. It is now 8:36.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Go back to the meeting, make this public notification.
Okay. One more thing, I was told that we need to make this public notification of the serial bond principal and interest payment of the bond obtained in 2012 for $1,300,000 will be made in the amount of $80,287.50 on September 15, 2018. And this bond will be issued upon financing of the STP grid system, the STP reconstruction, and the water tank work. All right. And that is notification that the principal and interest will be paid $80,287.50 on September 15th. Right? Of this year, 2018. Well, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you all for coming. And it's been a long meeting tonight. Got a lot of items on the agenda, a lot of good discussion. Thank you very much for coming. And maybe next time you see Judy. She's doing better. She's at home, and she is working on physical therapy.
I don't know, I couldn't get on Facebook, I tried tonight.
Just for recycling. Why don't you say something like this? Breakfast may be claimed if departure is before 6 a.m. and return is before 9. Lunch may be claimed.
She's so jelly.
I know, but could you take
figured you put a clip on there somewhere.
It's right here.
Okay. All right.
Always picking on me.
Don, it was your night tonight.
Return it to 443, so when they leave, they can have it.
See this right here?